before every big move. Livermore saw this first. That's the thought that has echoed in my mind for years, quiet, haunting, and strangely empowering. Because if you spend enough time studying the tape, living through cycles, and watching the market breathe like a living creature, you start to notice something too. The early tremors, the subtle vibrations, the tiny psychological fractures that appear long before the crowd realizes what's coming. What would you do if you saw the shift before anyone else? Comment your thoughts below, because this question separates the gambler from the trader. Now, let me take you into the mindset of Jesse Livermore, the man who didn't just trade the market, he listened to it. He believed that before every massive rally, before every catastrophic collapse, there was always a first tell, a whisper, a slight change in behavior, something no indicator could display, no news headline could explain, and no algorithm could define. Livermore called it the line of least resistance, the moment when the market quietly reveals its true intention. And I want to start this story there because understanding this concept is the difference between forever chasing moves and positioning yourself before the storm begins. I remember the first time I noticed this phenomenon in my own trading journey. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't even prepared for it. But the market has a way of educating you through experience, brutal, expensive experience. There was a chart I had watched for weeks, a stock everyone had written off. Dead money, they said. No story, no catalyst, no reason. But there was something happening underneath the surface. The tape felt different. The selling no longer pushed it down. The bids began absorbing like the ocean swallowing raindrops. Quiet, consistent, patient. It was the kind of action Livermore described as professionals taking positions while the public sleeps. And at that moment, a strange realization struck me. This wasn't accumulation you could see. It was accumulation you could feel. That feeling, subtle, nearly invisible, became the first clue before a 40% rally that blindsided everyone else. But I didn't learn this from luck. I learned it from studying Livermore's philosophy until it influenced the way I interpreted even the smallest price movement. He preached something we rarely hear today. The big money is not in the buying or the selling, but in the waiting for the shift, waiting for the change in character, waiting for the moment when the market finally reveals where it actually wants to go. That's what this video is about. The moment before the breakout, before the crash, before the huge momentum explosion that turns an ordinary day into a legendary move. Because every major trend in history, every bear market, every bull market, every parabolic mania or brutal collapse has always shown a subtle sign first. And Livermore lived his entire trading career searching for that moment, sharpening his instincts to identify it faster, clearer, and more confidently. Let me paint this for you. Imagine the market as a vast ocean. Most traders stare at the waves, reacting to every splash, every swell, every ripple. They panic, they chase, they overthink, they drown. But Livermore stood on the shoreline, watching the tide, not the waves. He didn't care about the noise. He cared about the underlying direction. Because when the tide shifts, the fate of the ocean is already decided. And here's the truth. Most traders never want to face it. By the time the breakout is obvious, it's already too late. By the time the collapse is confirmed, the smart money is already gone. By the time the news reports it, the move is already mature. Livermore knew that markets turn quietly, not loudly. He looked for subtle clues. The drying volume after aggressive selling, the inability of price to break down despite bad news, small upticks that appear at unusual times of day, repeated tests of a level that refuse to fail, or the opposite, greed that boils over, exhaustion prints forming at the top. The tape becoming heavy like a tired fighter struggling to stay on his feet. These weren't signals, they were tells. Behave like a professional poker player, reading the smallest twitch of an opponent's eye. That's what separated Livermore from the masses. That's what built and destroyed his fortunes. And that's what modern traders still struggle with. The ability to recognize the moment before the moment. Because when you master that, you stop reacting to the market. and the market begins revealing itself to you. In this story, I'm going to take you through the psychology, the philosophy, and the cinematic emotional weight of realizing what Livermore truly meant. And to do that, we must move deeper into the tension, the pressure, the contradicting signals, and the inner conflict every trader experiences when those subtle clues appear. I want you to imagine something with me for a moment. It's the quiet before dawn. The market hasn't opened yet. You're sitting alone, maybe at your desk, maybe with a cup of coffee, maybe just staring at a screen full of charts that look frozen in time. There's no news, there's no excitement, there's just silence. And yet, deep inside you, something stirs. A tension, a flicker of possibility, a whisper of direction in a market that still looks directionless. This right. Here is the exact moment Jesse Livermore lived for. Before every major move, before every rally that changed fortunes, before every collapse that erased years of illusions, Livermore would feel this shift long before the crowd even had a clue. Not because he was lucky, not because he had some secret indicator, but because he understood something timeless. Markets shout at the top, but they whisper at the turning point. And the hardest part about trading is learning to trust the whisper. Most traders need confirmation. They need the breakout. They need the headline. They need social media screaming in agreement before they dare take a step. But by then, the smart money has already moved. Quietly, invisibly, decisively. That's the paradox at the heart of trading, and it's where our story comes to its cinematic close. The moment the market finally reveals its hand, Livermore said something that changed the way I read price action forever. Men who can both be right and sit tight are uncommon. That line is more than a quote. It's a philosophy, a worldview, a discipline forged through decades of emotional scars. Because the moment you first sense the shift, the moment you feel the tide changing, your greatest enemy appears. Not the market, not other traders, not volatility, your own doubt. Doubt is the trap that has stolen more fortunes than bear markets ever have. You see the early accumulation. You notice the drying sell pressure. You sense the heavy top forming. You feel the market changing, but your mind whispers, what if I'm wrong? What if it's a fake out? What if I'm too early? What if I get stopped out again? This is where Livermore's greatest lesson reveals itself, not in charts, not in strategies, but in character. He believed big moves were not captured by skill, but by emotional endurance, by the courage to trust what the crowd cannot yet see. When you sense the early shift, you stand at a crossroads. Take the position when the clue is fresh, clean, and quiet, or wait until the world confirms it, and miss the very edge that creates the profit. And here's the truth. Livermore understood. You can't catch big moves with small courage. You can't anticipate major turning points with a timid mind. You can't follow the tape if you don't trust yourself. It's not about guessing the market. It's about recognizing its change in behavior and having the emotional strength to act on it. The final cinematic turn. Let me take you back to that early morning silence. The market finally opens. A small uptick appears, nothing dramatic. Most traders ignore it. The volume isn't impressive. There's no news catalyst. Nothing on the surface suggests anything meaningful is happening. But beneath the surface, the shift is complete. That whisper you felt earlier, that tension in the tape, that subtle change in character, it was real. Minutes pass. Hours pass. Then, suddenly, the move begins. Slowly at first, then steadily, then violently. And as the momentum explodes, you hear the noise, the commentators, the influencers, the analysts, the latecomers shouting, "This is the breakout. This is the move. This is the moment." But you already knew. You were there earlier. You felt it when it was still invisible. And that, in its purest form, is Livermore's entire legacy. Not prediction, not perfection, not certainty, but recognition. Recognition of early shifts. Recognition of crowd psychology. Recognition of the tape's subtle change. Recognition of when the tide quietly begins to turn. Everything else is noise, the final lesson for modern traders. So here's my final message to you as we close this cinematic exploration. Before every big move, the market always gives the first clue. Always. But only traders with patience, emotional control, and Livermore level awareness ever notice it. The crowd sees the breakout, the professional sees the behavior, and the master sees the shift. So the question you must carry with you from this moment forward is simple. Am I listening to the market, or am I waiting for the crowd to tell me what to think? Because every life-changing trade, every collapse, every rally worth capturing begins long before anyone believes in it. And if you train yourself to notice the whisper, you will never look at price action the same way again. What's the earliest clue you look for before a big move? Drop your insights in the comments below. I'd love to see how your instincts compare to the principles Livermore spent his life mastering. Thank you for being here. If you felt connected to this story, if the psychology resonated with you, if the philosophy stirred something deep, then remember, the market may be chaotic, but your awareness doesn't have to be. Trade with intention. Trade with patience. Trade with the quiet confidence that Livermore carried into every battle.